to Talking AI, a podcast about all things artificial intelligence, in case you didn't guess from the title, brought to you by Scan AI. My name's Nikki Dean. I'm a technology presenter with a particular interest in AI, and this chap you can probably see in the corner is Dan Parkinson. He's my co-host for the series. Hi, Dan.
Good afternoon.
Now, you're the Director of Collaboration, fancy title, at Scan AI, and you're going to be bringing your expert knowledge and your real-world experience to the table, so I've been told.
I'll do my best.
And today we're going to be talking about, we did touch upon it actually in our first ever episode, is AI taking over our jobs? Short answer.
Yes. Thanks for coming. See you next week.
We'll see you next time. Obviously, we are going to elaborate on that one, but in a nutshell, yes, it is. That's quite scary for some people. So we do need to probably elaborate and tell people what that means so they're not all running off fearful, thinking, that's it now, I'll hang up my boots, I haven't got a job.
Yeah, I think, the easiest way to think of it is it's the fourth industrial revolution. So it's changing the jobs, I think, is more than taking them. Is probably a better way of putting it, or a nicer.
It doesn't grab the headlines quite the same, though, does it?
No. Similar with previous industrial revolution, when you rolled out factories, that replaced a lot of people making things, but you still needed a mechanic to maintain those machines. So very much the same with this now, that maybe AI will replace a specific job role, but you'll still need someone to build those AI models, to build the infrastructure that trains those models. So it's more of a resource reappropriation.
Oh, I like that one. That's very fancy, isn't it? Yeah. I think that it's probably more apt to say, is AI changing some of our jobs?
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. And creating new ones in the process. So it's not something that we need to be fearful of, but it definitely needs to be on our radar, doesn't it?
I think you can still be fearful of it, but it's going to happen.
It's going to happen regardless, so embrace. Yeah. Let's maybe then give some examples of jobs that are being taken over slowly but surely by AI. I mean, automation is a massive big thing, isn't it? So are there any particular industries that are maybe sort of being most affected by this?
Anything manufacturing is going to be affected with that automation from robotics. But again, if you can copy and paste AI into pretty much any industry or any asset, any area of a particular business, from logistics to marketing, customer services, even the actual salespeople, in the form of recommendation engines are being sort of replaced. If you look at like an Amazon, for example, that doesn't have any physical salespeople, yet they do get a lot of sales. Yeah, so a lot of the traditional job roles that you would maybe see are being or can be replaced by AI roles.
Yeah, I mean it's not that new, really, is it? If you think about sort of going to your local supermarket, and we've had self-checkouts for a long time, haven't we? Where obviously that's using an element of AI, and people have just sort of embraced it. I mean, they can be a bit annoying. Sometimes you want to talk to a human, but actually, in terms of efficiency, sometimes you'd rather go to the self-checkout. So It's got pros and cons, hasn't it? And it's not like it's just been thrust upon us. It has been sort of slowly in the background. Have you got any more examples then of some roles or maybe some areas of our lives where we're already using AI, where traditionally it might have been a human being doing that job?
Customer services is a big one. That, from chatbots as an example. And the good thing I say good thing from a business perspective is they don't work shifts. They don't need paying per se per hour. Yes. Obviously you've got to fund everything that goes into building that model, but once you sort of deploy that, it can work 24 hours as long as the underlying hardware is working.
Absolutely.
So it's changing that way. Yeah, customer services, whenever a lot of the websites that you visit these days have got a little pop-up that jumps up and it'll give you a name like John is online and is ready to talk to you. That is quite often a chatbot in some way, shape or form, and it's just looking for key terms in what you're asking.
Yeah.
And that's AI fundamentally. It's just looking for specific phrases to then link it to an action and an outcome, which is all you're really interacting with that person for.
Absolutely. I mean, and as the sort of end user consumer, if you like, we all do want efficiency. We do expect now things to be like super fast, lightning fast, don't we? So if you can talk to a chat bot that can differentiate between maybe a positive message that you're doing or keywords that, they've asked this question, so here's the likely answer, rather than be on the phones where you have to dial all those numbers and then you get cut off invariably. As the end user, it does have an advantage, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, exactly what you said then. It's operational efficiency more than anything. You want, the only reason that you'll interact with that is to, say, for example, you want to do a return. And Amazon do this quite well. I want to return a specific item. All right, which of these? It'll pick that you want to return an item, and it'll throw up the last 10 items that you've ordered. You click on the one that you want to return, and then it'll just point you to the bit where you go and return it. That's all you just want to get to, that bit of how I return something. I know we've looked a lot at Amazon there. A lot of banking industry use chatbots for things like that. I want to check on my balance or whatever, or not necessarily. Maybe you do that a different way, but
yeah, but it's cropping up everywhere, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. In a lot of the implementations of things like that, customer service chatbots, that's not industry specific. Automation, where you look at robotics, for example, that is, anything that can be manufactured. You look at the car manufacturing industry, that's changed dramatically over the years, from being all vehicles being handmade to now it's an automated robot that will go and pick the parts and then put it all together throughout that production line. And it's even, going even further into that, a bit more granular, they're using AI to detect imperfections in the actual manufacturing process, which is traditionally, someone would have years of experience to identify a specific dent or tear in a particular piece of material that makes up a car. That can be automated and, let a robot scan that, 10 pieces per minute or whatever. So yeah, it's going quite far and wide in terms of the actual applications of AI.
Which is sad, using that example, to think of somebody who's very highly trained and been doing it for a very long time, and that all of a sudden a robot comes in and dare I say it, they're probably going to be more accurate as well, aren't they? Because they don't have all the things that sometimes interfere with a human being's ability to spot things like that. If you're tired or you've been on a long shift or the light's not right, well, like there's a formula for these robots. They either get it or they don't get it, don't they? So that kind of element of, accuracy, I dare say, is better with robots. Am I right in saying that? For those kind of, not monotonous, but, repetitive jobs where you're looking for slight little imperfections, the human eye can miss things. A robot is less likely to.
Yeah, and I think you sort of, you touched on a point there, which I think was really key to that accuracy. So say a robot is 95% accurate, but it's 95% accurate for 24 hours a day. If you've got a doctor, for example, that's reviewing chest x-rays, he may be 97% accurate for the first couple of hours of his shift. But then towards the end of his shift, that accuracy with tiredness and all those other human elements play into it could potentially, drop down. I'm not saying it would, but, it
for everybody refuses afternoon appointments with the doctor. No, I listen to Talking AI and I know I need the first appointment of the day. No, but in all seriousness, we get hungry, we need to drink, we need to go to the loo, all of those things that might take your eye slightly off the ball.
It's the human element.
Exactly, but robots don't have that and they can go 24 hours a day. So it's quite sad to think somebody's trained for years, highly specialised, probably, raking in a good few bob. Robot comes along. But in the same breath, what we have to say, what we said from the beginning is there will be other jobs then that sort of sit outside of that are created. So let's talk about some examples of that then, so that we're sort of lifting people back up before they think that actually, yes, this job I used to be able to get paid a lot of money for, a robot's going to do it. With my job, for example, just to go off on a tangent, we were listening the other day and I thought, that voice, it's an AI voiceover. Well, there you go. That's me done.
There's lots of companies
I need a
doing
new job.
That now.
I know they are.
There's a company that we've been working with, and they specialise in, you just submit a piece of text, a prose, or even the wording from a book, and then they will just they've built a model that does exactly that. They've got a human sounding voice. They understand pace and tonality, and they've got a model that can then produce that. And that's going to be very big in the gaming industry, but it's going to stop things like voice actors.
Yeah.
So, it will replace roles, but I think just jogging back to what you were saying, that it's going to create lots of other roles there for people that do embrace that journey, that AI it's a transformation. So you're going to have data engineers, data scientists who are building these models, infrastructure specialists who, will understand the underlying hardware. You're going to need someone physically on site. If you've got a robot that's going to be building these cars, you're going to need someone that can repair and fix these robots and make sure that they are functioning. So there's going to be a lot of other jobs created off the back of it, but it'll just be different types of jobs and digitally focused ones.
Well, it's certainly very interesting times, isn't it? So in your role within Scan AI, obviously you're working around this all the time. You're talking to all sorts of different businesses and kind of different people with different questions. So what are some of the trends that you're seeing then? How is AI sort of being incorporated just generally in the world?
Wow. I could spend an hour telling you about these now. It's very much, it's not specific industries. We see certain industries are more prevalent with it, like healthcare, have adopted AI techniques quite quickly, but it's sort of mapped across, globally across, it's not industry specific, everything from defense, manufacturing, as we were talking about before, but then, from like a retail perspective or even just a services perspective, like your Amazons, your Googles, your Ubers, they're all deploying AI in some way, shape or form.
So you mentioned obviously big brands, and we'll get into the nitty gritty about some of them, but just kind of playing devil's advocate then, is this going to mean that we're going to see more of a divide between these big sort of multinational companies and smaller companies being able to compete? Because if they don't have the same funds to put into research and development and maybe, apply some of these applications within their business, is that going to make the divide even bigger, or kind of what's going to happen in that field?
Yes and no. Obviously, the more that you plow into specific R&D, the more of a focused model that you're going to get for your own business. But that's not to say that people at the entry stage won't have a very good AI model. There's a lot of open resources that NVIDIA, that Intel, are working on and building and giving access out to the general public as an open resource that have already been trained and are already very, very competent models. So you can take them, you can retrain them on your specific data to make it even more accurate. But it's not to say that, if you've got £1 billion, you can get, you might have a head start on everybody, but it depends on the application that you want to put in place, if that makes sense. It's like a fraud detection, for example. There are models out there that can do that. Maybe they're 90% accurate, and you put £1 billion into R&D, and that will become 99.9% accurate. So you're just sort of improving the efficiency of that implementation.
So let's talk about some of the particular applications then. Have you got any, like you mentioned some of the big brands, so let's take a look at what they're doing then and how they're implementing AI and maybe automation as a good example.
Yeah, I mean, everything. So as I mentioned, fraud detection's a big thing. So anything that has online transactions will have an element of fraud in there. So fraud detection's a big application that can be automated and improved with AI. Recommendation engines, obviously, we discussed quite a bit with both yours and my skirt shopping recommendations.
Well, also you were trying to trick it last time, weren't you, by saying, "Oh, I'm going to go and click on another program that I don't really want to watch and see what it does." Has it caught up with you yet?
No, not yet.
No.
I've just stopped watching it. See, this is the Fugazi.
Oh, there you go. He's taking some time out. He's outsmarting his own telly.
That's all it is.
It's slowly backfired.
It's a pattern. It does. So then my daughter started watching it, and it started just showing me all kids' videos now. I'm like,
there you go.
Don't want to watch that.
Anyway, sorry, I butted in then. Let's crack on. So some other examples. We've got recommendation engines.
Yeah, but then the back end stuff that you maybe don't see. So route optimization. So things like Uber, when we was talking about, route optimization from that, finding the right driver. A lot of the actual integration into the front end that people see. There's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes from marketing. It could just be learning how you've done marketing and then allocating the funding and the resources, finding the best and most efficient way. If you've got a £10,000 budget from a marketing perspective, what's the most efficient way of spending that? Traditionally, that would take maybe many hours of your own personal R&D of looking at metrics of things that you have done and has worked, where AI models can sort of almost predict where you're going to get your most bang for buck.
Which is key, isn't it? So let's take the example of Uber then. So I use Uber a lot. It's just made life a lot easier in terms of if you need to get somewhere on a night out, for example, you can have a quick look. Oh, there's loads out tonight. You know, you can check out what your fare's going to be. Make sure it's all right with your mates, get it ordered, it's at your door within minutes. If we take a look at how traditionally you would have ordered a taxi, how many people's jobs do we think that's kind of eradicated? That's a good word, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Eradicate.
Makes it sound a bit dramatic as well, though, doesn't it? But, you know, traditionally you'd have dialed up. It's a bit hit and miss if there's any taxis.
Yeah.
So if we maybe talk about the journey then, how many people traditionally would have been involved in what Uber can do in milliseconds?
Looking at my local taxi firm as an example, as a smaller example, a small business of an Uber, you know, they would have traditionally had a couple of operators and then an office manager to count up at the end of the night and then all the drivers, but then they needed to pay for software to, you know, contact the drivers and have all the radios in the cars and all of that. Whereas now you then copy that out onto an Uber, which is a global platform. For that to then answer millions of phone calls, you would have needed quite literally thousands, hundreds of thousands of operators. And then all of that optimization, the routes, the planning of, have we got a driver in your area, radioing through. Whereas now, you know, what Uber have done, they've got the GPS in the car, so it's real-time data, but they can also use that to find a driver that has the most optimal route for where you want to go. And using that that exact route, they can plan exactly how much it's going to cost you. So exactly what you just said then of, I can tap on an app and see there's maybe 3 cars floating around the area. You don't know which one of those 3 cars you're going to get because you don't know if they're going to get assigned to a job that may be more efficient for them to take them in a different direction. So it's improved the efficiency of that industry, of resource allocation, of making sure you've got the right thing for you that's the most efficient for you as well. So it's rolling recommendations, but all sorts of different data points. I think that's key there, to then give you the best possible service rather than ringing through and speaking to, I'm just turning your corner now. I've not even told you where I'm going or ringing from.
Well, exactly, that old chestnut of, he's 5 minutes away, love, he's 5 minutes. No, he's not, I've been waiting and you told me that 6 times. But I mean, there are lots of benefits as well. And I guess for the end user, which is, if we put, that's what we're thinking of because we are the end user in this scenario, is everything's really simplified. You can find out in advance, so you can check on, you know, like say, for example, at the weekend, I was thinking, I only need to brush my hair and stick a bit of lippy on. Oh, brilliant, right, well, so I'm 5 minutes away. I'll do it now and I've still got time to do my bits. I'll be at the front door in plenty of time. Whereas before, it would be hit and miss. Have you got anyone? Be 30 minutes, love. And then you think, you know, that's totally thrown all our plans out the window. The consumer's doing the legwork as well. You're telling them where you want to be, and that's communicating without ever having to involve, say, Eileen, who's maybe worked there for 50 years, who's very lovely, very efficient, but she doesn't have all the information at her fingertips. She's then got to go and make another phone call. And then the other aspect of it, for certainly when Uber first came out, as a female who sometimes travels alone, is the safety aspect. You get to know who's going to pick you up with a registration number. Yeah. You can share your route with people so they know that you end up at where you're going to be, and you don't ever have to have cash on you either. It's all linked to your bank account. It's taken out a million different things that you would have had to think about before.
Yeah.
Maybe not a million, but I'm exaggerating.
No, it is.
A fair few things.
Yeah, definitely. And it's part of that digital transformation. But so I actually experienced this at the weekend with a local company. I didn't use Uber, sadly, but I used their local taxi firm and they had a shortage of drivers. We didn't know that. We'd pre-booked taxis for a specific time. The taxi driver had to we were supposed to get 2 taxis at a specific time. Only one turned up. He went, I don't know, love. I think I'm going to have to take this one and come back for you.
I love our taxi driver voice that we've adopted.
Bob.
He'll say love.
He's actually called Bob as well. Bob. I don't know why he was calling me love. It was quite dark.
He had your skirt on, the one we recommended from ASOS last week.
So yeah,
anyway.
He had to then go and make a couple of trips. But a lot of it, and that's the point, it was manual. And it was like you say, it was paying him in cash, and you still got that human element. We know Bob, we know the taxi company, but we didn't have that visibility and that traceability. We didn't know when he was coming back. He had to go and make a trip first and then come back. And there was none of that on the app where you can see the map and you can physically see, right, he's just turning into our estate.
Yeah. Quick, everybody, lock on the back door. We're going.
I did exactly that. So I used the app going,
yeah,
and I could see, I was watching I've become a bit of a Like everyone has. I was watching the driver turn into our estate. I'm like, right, yeah, he's nearly there. Right, lock the doors. We're going to stand on the next side.
Go see your wife. Get your shoes on. He's here. Although it's interesting you say that, because I'm going to the airport at the weekend quite early, and I was discussing with my boyfriend. He went, no, I don't want to rely on Uber. I want to call a traditional taxi firm and know there's going to be somebody there, because the fear is with Uber, you're kind of doing it before you don't pre-book them. So you get up, and if I get up at 3 a.m. and there's no one on the shift, I'm snookered. Whereas if you book it with a so I guess there's pros and cons, and I don't know why my mindset is still around that. Going to the airport, I kind of want to book it in with Bob.
You're just part
Is
of
he
this
working?
digital transformation now. But that's the fear, isn't
I'm
it?
straddling the two worlds.
You
I
are.
don't know quite where I'm coming or going. But Uber's certainly efficient, but there's something about that old-fashioned speaking to a
accountability.
human, knowing they'll be there, having my cash ready, and they'll take me to the airport because they do it all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's
It's a funny one.
and I think it's just having that accountability. It's the same as trusting an AI chatbot to do and handle your return, rather than going to a physical store and then saying to this person, right, I want to watch you type my details in so I know I'm going to get my refund. It's trusting in a process. It's trusting that Uber, as you said, are going to have enough vehicles at 3 o'clock in your area. I actually had that exact problem. A couple of years ago, I was out in France, and I'd planned to get an Uber to the airport. So I got up, no Ubers available for an hour. So then I had to then default to, the original.
The old-fashioned
the
way.
manual way, yeah. I went down to reception and I was like, I need to get to the airport in the next 20 minutes. Can you help me? And then he called a local taxi agency that then took me to the airport. So yeah, they're great. Are they perfect? Possibly not. But again, that's where they need to, they're being like the Ubers, need to, and that's maybe something that's missing. And maybe this is the fifth transformation of collecting all of this data and then reviewing it is, do they know how many journeys they've missed out on because they've not had drivers in certain areas? If they use that, that isn't a thing. This is me just freeballing now. But
trademark it. We'll have this as our next business.
It's not, you can't log something on the app that says, I would have used you, but you didn't have a driver in my area at this time. That piece of information would be amazing for Uber, because they could then log all that and collate it and say, well, it actually makes more sense to have a driver roughly in this general area at this time, because we might pick up a couple of fares.
The problem is that the drivers decide when they work, don't they? Because they're all self-employed, I believe.
Yeah, but again, if he's presented with the information of, if you are working, you may pick up a job, you may be going to an airport at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
If you're roughly awake, they'll, because we know from experience, from history,
supply and demand,
that
isn't
data, that we might have a couple of jobs around here. I think that's maybe where things could go.
Yeah. Without making this the Uber show then, but it's a good example because I think most people would use it. But I think, because there's always an element, I think, of the fear of the unknown. Even though I have an interest in it and I talk to people like yourself and I've interviewed data science and stuff, there's still a bit of me like, oh, it is a bit scary. It can be a bit scary. If you're right at the other end of the spectrum and you're just hearing these phrases, it can be completely overwhelming. We've spoken before, and before we started recording here, about kind of the older generation, that they've been doing the job forever. They may be coming to the end of their career. They don't really want to embrace it. They don't feel that they should do. How do anyone in general, but particularly people who might be sort of feeling a bit left out, how do they go about information about what should they have on the radar? What should they be kind of embracing? And what can they do to kind of, what's the word I'm after, future-proof themselves a little bit in certain roles? Is there plenty of information out there? Because it can feel like a massive minefield.
Yeah, it can. I mean, we've got a very particular set of skills over at Scan. Yeah. Not wanting to get into any trademark battles with Disney or Warner Brothers there, but we do a lot of informational videos. So there's a lot of educational information that we put out there as Scan, NVIDIA and everybody else who builds these models do a lot of information on what it is and what it means and how to implement it. If you're looking to get into it and actually start embracing AI and move into that.
As a business, you mean, or as a...
Yeah,
maybe implement
businesses
it in
as
what
a startup.
You do.
If you've just listened to my idea and you now want to pitch something to Uber,
don't leave us out. You've got to take us with you.
10% shares, right?
10, 25.
Okay, yeah,
at least.
Yeah, you're the commercial person now. each.
Yeah.
But yeah, if people want to get into it, we do, again, as Scan host courses that not demystify, but sort of give you the fundamentals, the basics of what is AI and how to build that model. So
Okay.
there's steps in there. But I think the key message for me is just it's not so much embracing this transformation, it's putting your trust in almost a computer for sorts rather than a person. And that's a different mindset shift because, again, you're still trusting a person is going to be there at 3 o'clock in the morning. It's that accountability. And if you can get over that you do already put accountability on a person and you're now going to put it into an AI model instead, that's the only thing you really have to overcome to embrace it.
There's that resistance anyway, though, isn't there, across the world? I'm thinking of my mum, and she's quite tech savvy, actually, for that generation, but she's just got a massive issue with online banking. She doesn't like the idea of pressing it, but she thinks it's going to go somewhere crazy, where I'm like, Mum, I do it all the time. So it's a trust. It's kind of, you've always done something a certain way. We all do this.
Yeah.
You don't really necessarily want to change, but over time, maybe there's a necessity. But I think it's also about having choice. So the other thing I would say about this is, without scaring people who might be thinking, oh my gosh, he said at the top, it's taking my jobs. There will always be jobs for humans, and there will always be in some of the traditional roles. So we see it using the example of the self-checkout. And I know we might talk about frictionless stores in a future episode, but we're nowhere near that just yet, are we? There's still going to be human cashiers. There's still going to be a security guy on the door that might say hi as you walk. Still going to get that interaction that not just older people, I love it as well, that human interaction, that hello, bit of a chit chat on the till, whatever. We're still going to have that run alongside what is essentially automated in most industries, would we say?
Probably, yeah. Yeah, you still need that human element. Again, like you said, and I think we actually talked about this in the last episode about, I personally feel that a lot of businesses have that responsibility to give that choice. I have started, it's interesting that you mentioned like the checkouts. I have started to see less and less human checkouts. That makes sense. So like people actually on the checkouts, and the big five or whoever are embracing a lot more of this automated checkouts where you scan it yourself and then walk through. Those started off just a small 3-5 of those little checkouts, and you'd have 95% of your other checkouts with people on there. That's probably about 50-50 in some of my local stores now. So
There's definitely been a shift, hasn't there?
Yeah, but that, again, it's that phasing in of getting people comfortable with it, using it, and they'll probably see a shift in their own metrics that more people are starting to use that and less people are going through the physical human tills. So you will probably still have some of those human tills, but they'll maybe become the minority until they get phased out. And I think that links to a generational thing. Our kids are going to get the banking thing, for example.
I hope they never do.
But that will be the norm for them, digital banking. They won't be, my son's not, he's got savings account and my daughter's got savings account, but they don't have a physical bank account. And a lot of the banks, the local banks, are actually closing bricks and mortar stores.
It's true.
Because not as many people are going in, but they're still there to give those options, really, that choice to people that still want to go in there. But I think it's just going to be driven by that, and everyone will embrace some form of transformation into this AI, into the digital age, and it will just phase in over 10, 15, 20 years.
It's not going to be an overnight thing, is it, as well? And like we touched upon last time, and I know we're going to go more into the education side of things as well, is that our kids and their kids, they're going to learn completely different things at school at some point, certainly built in with your core subjects, but about how the world operates, much like we did. I'm sure there's things that we did at school, like IT. It was in its infancy, I think, when I started doing it, but my mum would never have done that at school. But anyway, what I'm saying is it changes what you do at school, doesn't it?
Yeah, massively. I mean, so I was actually having this conversation with a friend over the weekend that when we were in primary school, even up to like year 3 and year 4, and I'm quite old, I might not look it, but
it's debatable. Depends who's watching.
We had one computer across the entirety of the juniors,
Yeah.
and that had like Windows DOS on there, or
Windows
MS-DOS.
DOS?
MS-DOS and Windows 3.1 it got upgraded to, and there was only like one person could use it at a time. My daughter is 6, so she's not even got into the juniors. She's got an allocated iPad every child has an iPad. She was showing some of the videos that she was creating. Like, it's like multi-touch, like switching between apps. She's like a proper power user of this technology because they've been brought up and embraced it.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to go back to the original question, is AI taking our jobs? The answer is yes, in some guys. It's also creating others. But the key thing to remember is there's loads of information out there should you need to. Start embracing it, start educating yourself, and it's going to happen over a fairly lengthy period of time, isn't it? Like anything.
Yeah, like you said, it's replacing some roles, but there is, where one door closes, another one's going to open. There is going to be some other roles created off the back of that, whether that's building the stuff that the AI models run on or whatever, creating those AI models. So it is just going to change the types of jobs we do.
Will there ever be a robotic director of collaboration, do you think? Is your job under threat?
I hope not.
It wouldn't have your charm.
Well, he might, if he's listening to all of my videos.
If they've been collecting your data in the background and training the robot to be just like you.
They'd need loads of videos and audio. Oh, man. Maybe all my calls are recorded for quality and training purposes for that.
We're getting paranoid now, aren't we? Jokes aside, hopefully you and I will never be... There might be 2 AI hosts next time. In fact, let's aim to do that towards the end of the series. We can go and have a coffee up the road and we'll just let them talk.
Robots.
There you go. Anyway, it's all gone a little bit crazy here, hasn't it? But I hope that people have taken the gist out of it, is that yes, some jobs will do. It's going to be a long-term thing and there'll always be jobs out there. There's got to be. Yeah. We all need to earn a crust, don't we?
Definitely.
So what we're going to talk about next time?
No idea.
Retail?
Retail, yeah.
How AI and retail.
Specifically, how and where it's being applied in the retail sector, yeah.
And we can talk a little bit more about frictionless stores, which was a phrase that I used. If you're not unsure what that is, then you need to tune in next time, and we'll use an example of actually Joe and Gemma, who work in here. I believe they've used a frictionless store in real life.
Woo.
So we'll get their insight. Anyway, it's been a pleasure. Have you enjoyed it again?
I have, yeah. I always enjoy it.
Me too. Thank you very much. And next time we'll talk about retail and education. So see you then.